Vanessa was the first American and British woman to summit K2 and the author of To the Greatest Heights, which we have signed, available at Lemuria. It's also our first editions club pick for this month, so we're really excited about that one. And Jim is an adventure reporter for Forbes magazine. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'm going to put a link to the signed copies on the comments and comment any questions that you might have for Vanessa. I'm going to turn it over to y'all now.
Okay, well, thank you, Katie. Vanessa, it's really nice to meet you. The book is great. Obviously, we want to get into it a little bit now. I guess my first question is, why did you decide to write this book?
Hey, Jim, nice to see you. You look like you're somewhere really fun.
Did you? I'm in the International Space Station. So.
I could not comment on that lovely background of yours. You might be To the Greatest Heights, actually, even as we talk about To the Greatest Heights. Okay, so, I decided to write the book really because after all the talks that I would do, we always end talks with Q&A, and the Q&A was always longer than the presentations. And at the end of Q&A, people would say, well, when is the book coming out? And of course, I thought they were joking, and maybe some of them were. But the reality was that people wanted to know more, and there's only so much you can talk about in an hour span or, a small amount of time. But when I thought about it some more, I thought, there's so much that happens on these expeditions that are really quite fascinating, philosophically, psychologically, and spiritually, mentally, all these other things. But, could I actually think about it, write about it? How would I organize the material, and could I make it funny and interesting? And could there be like threaded through it, some little interesting lessons or things like that? So I started to take those requests a little bit more seriously. And then one day, I think it was probably after K2, I did put pen to paper, and probably the first iterations were just terrible. They were really, really terrible. And some of them are probably still floating around. I mean, they were just, wow. Like,
they're collector's items.
That they probably, might be, worth laughing about one day. But because I tried different styles. I tried, some were a little too Bridget Jonesy. Some were a little too, I had acronyms for people. I used real names, then I used fake names, and it was all over the shop. But I ended up over and over again getting through the material and eventually getting a story in place. And it came together as a book. And before I knew it, that it was done, and it read well, and it told a story, and it was interesting, and that was it.
Well, is it? I mean, I don't know. Is it a memoir? What is it?
Yes, it is a memoir, and what that means is it's a true story, loosely based on facts. I say that only in jest because memory is a flawed device. It's a complicated machine, and I do my best with some imperfections of what memory is. That's not necessarily the further back, the worse it is. It can be very near, and the worse it is, as anybody at high altitude will tell you. You could take the same team at the same place, and they all have different stories of what happened. So it is... the hardest part, I would say, was really when I first wrote it. I wrote it just based on the expeditions, and then when I had some professional individuals read it, they said there were two things missing. Those two things were anything about my husband, and the other thing was anything about my past, my childhood. And I really, with heels dug in, added those two things. And really it was just, my husband's a private person, and he wasn't involved other than in a support role. I didn't really want to bring him in as a character. And then, the past is not very pleasant, so I didn't really want to drag that through the book. However, I understand that, it does add certainly some there are some things there that are good to know, and it's good for people to overcome some things. So anyway, I did have a great plot whisperer that I worked with, and she helped me very cleverly place these so that they weren't in one place and overbearing, but that they were sprinkled like a nice flavor throughout various parts of chapters so that they fed through in a very clever way in storytelling. And I'm just ever so grateful for her assistance and guidance in that respect, because it made the book a much richer book and a better read, more, how could I say it? It wasn't clunky. It was cleverly done, and it fit with the material. And it's amazing how some of that stuff actually really fit with the material, and I probably didn't see it because I had blind spots on.
Well, I think, I've interviewed a lot of adventurers and climbers and whatnot, and I don't think it's unusual for them not to want to talk about personal feelings and things like that. But as a writer myself, I know that adds a lot, and I think you've done a good job in your book about bringing out the things about you that have made you successful. I guess a question I have is, most successful people, they don't take no for an answer. They don't quit. I think from what I've seen with you on K2 and other things in your life, you've persevered. One thing I would ask you is, how do you know when to say no? I mean, on a mountain, it could be life and death if you make the wrong decision. Is it a gut feeling you have? Talk about a few times maybe where you've said, you know what, I know when to say when.
So, I really hate making a judgment call about when to say no, because it's almost like history judges success or failure based on how it comes out. Like, just as an example, like, I might be part of the only team in 2017 to go to the summit of K2, and so that looks like a success. But we took a lot of risk to do that. So because we succeeded, therefore it looks like a success. And I don't like to make those judgment calls, because those that turned around had a lower risk appetite, and they didn't make the wrong call. A similar situation is Winter K2. The Sherpa made it up in a small weather window, but there were those that died and lost their life in a also small weather window. Can I say one was less successful, one did the wrong thing? It's like, I never want to make those judgment calls when I'm not in the mountain, or, weather can change so instantly, conditions change, and I can never really say for sure when yes is yes and when no is no, and I would never want to judge another team on those conditions either. I can only judge what I did when I'm there myself, and even then, in absolute terms, I would always say there's always a little percentage of luck that has to be part of that equation. So you can have almost a stack bar chart, or a stack bar of everything: experience, skill, timing, weather, conditions, all these things, and then there's just going to be a little tiny bit that says is God ready to pull your name out of a hat, and is it your time? And hopefully that answer is no, but is it or not? I don't know. One day that time will come when the answer is yes.
Well, hopefully it'll be a ways off. I recently interviewed Nomal Purja, who did the Winter Summit K2, and I asked him the same question, and his answer was, when you make that decision, and often it's a really close 51-49 or whatever, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to say, okay, am I doing this because I'm ready to do it, conditions are right, or am I doing it for fame or for my friends or the wrong reasons? And I think that's a hard thing to do. And again, like you said, some people turn around, some people stay. I think part of it's individual, right? Some of them feel they're at the edge of the rope for them, and and maybe, as you say, they have a little less of a risk appetite. But clearly, you're a person who's done a lot of things and been successful, and so there's something inside, and you must have a gut feel for the right call.
Yeah, I mean, but there are times when we have turned around. We turned around in 2015, 2016. 2015, I did want to turn around. There was rockfall accidents and conditions were bad with El Nino. 2016, I probably, that was not my decision to turn around, but it was overall economics of wider groups and maybe spreading of fear because of perceived avalanches. But, one way or another, I think it does come down to individuals. And if there's a team, that is a group of individuals. Absolutely.
What, it seems to be a couple of themes going on here. How to succeed in life, how to succeed in business, how to succeed in adventure or exploration. You seem to be covering all that stuff metaphorically or narratively. What are the sort of the intersection points, among all those things? What do you need to be successful in those different things? Because you've been successful in all three of those things.
So, Jim, you're quite naughty to jump to success first. I think success, there are common themes, but success, the problem with success first is success tells you not to do anything differently. And okay. It's therefore not a great thing to have first. You won't do anything differently if you succeed. So the best thing to do is to have a little bit of failure, because failure allows you to tweak things, gives you a data point, and allows you to change things just enough to get the formula right to succeed. And I think it's chapter 7 where I open the book with a quote. It's John Wooden, a basketball coach, that says, the only place success is before work is in the dictionary. And I love that, because one of those threads, right, is hard work. If you really want something, you've got to work for it. So you've got to do the training. You got to pull those, you got to pull the tires if it's an expedition that requires endurance. You have to climb those stairs, if you want to build up that VO2 max or something that's going to get you cardiovascular strong. You got to do the work. And, the other things that are crucial is that failure will give you a data point, so you're not going to absolutely fail until you give up. That would be absolute failure. But as long as you're in the game, you're still going. So that's important. And also, all of these little things that you're doing will help you build confidence. And confidence is really, really important as you continue to grow and expand and do things in whatever you're doing. It doesn't even have to be sports related, but whatever you're doing, confidence is crucial. That's everything with looking somebody in the eye. Used to be a firm handshake. Maybe it's an elbow. But whatever it is today, start with confidence and start with something you can be confident about, how you feel. You're always confident about how you feel, but move into, data, something that you're knowledgeable about. But confidence is very important.
Yeah, I've heard the expression that success is just failure in disguise. And I guess what you're saying is that to succeed or to have a definition of success, you need to, I don't know if you have to fail, but you have to learn along the way. The funny thing is, in America, everybody says, oh, it's an overnight success. And you don't realize with musicians or anybody that they've worked really hard and taken baby steps to get where they are. All America wants to know is the overnight success. For you, I know you started out baby climbing. You started, from what I can see in the book, as a whim to climb Mount Everest. You just said, oh, I need something to do, and I'm going to go do that. And you'd never climbed in your life. And then you worked your way up to not only Everest and the 7 summits in record time in the poles, but you managed to conquer K2. And it took you 3 times. And I think, people will get that in the book, in that it took a lot of perseverance for you to do that. A lot of people would give up after one time, but you did it. So clearly, you were successful in business, and you can define success as whatever you want. You were successful in the mountains, and clearly in life, so far anyway. What do you want the reader to take away from this book? I mean, obviously many things, but what would be the main takeaway? Maybe there are different people that will take different things away.
The more I get feedback on the book, and the more, I even reread bits of it, it's the main takeaway for me is the book is less about mountain climbing and more about mountaineering as a metaphor. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe the memoir bit helps with this, but people are reading it and they're getting something from it based on where they are. And that's natural, by the way. Wherever you are in life, you absorb what you're reading based on where you are. Men and women are approaching it slightly differently. So men are appreciating sort of the activity of climbing and the philosophical sort of insightful, tidbits that are in there. But the women are seeing it a little bit differently. They're seeing it more inspirational as, if they are stuck somewhere, that these there's little things in here that give you little pointers that say, hey, you can move on from this. And it doesn't matter what age you are. And I think that's important too. And it doesn't really matter where you're stuck. If you're stuck in a career, if you're stuck in a relationship, if you're stuck living somewhere that you don't want to be living anymore. It's really knowing that the decisions are within you, and that you don't really need to wait for the safety net to evolve, that the safety net is already with you. It's like this invisible backpack that sits on the back of all of us, and you can't really see other people's backpacks, but some are huge. And it's all this knowledge and experience and skills that people have throughout life, and they run around with these backpacks, and it allows them to pivot and take steps and move in different directions. And if they move forward and they don't like it, no problem. They just go back because they have this giant backpack that says, I can go back. Nobody can take this away from me. Mm-hmm. And that's just so incredibly empowering, because people don't know they have this. They always think, oh no, well, what if I move and I don't like it? It's like, backpack. It's like, pull it out. You got everything you need, that tent, spoon, fork, bowl. Doesn't matter. You don't need this giant safety net of all the things you thought you needed, because nobody can take those things. You can always go backwards, but you never know where you're going to go if you take that step forward. And that's what's so cool.
Well, your Everest experience, just deciding to climb Everest, it's kind of crazy if you think about it, and not a bit risky. And look where it led you. So again, you weren't afraid to move to a different paradigm and explore it. And I agree, a lot of the adventures I've talked to, it's, you just want to move, because then you set up a whole new set of things that can happen. If you just stagnate, nothing will happen. You can sit there and ruminate. We're talking about this. What did you learn most about yourself writing this book? I mean, you had to be introspective. You obviously had to talk to your co-writer probably about things that were uncomfortable. What did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I'm a terrible person doing research without any boundaries. Not that I don't do well with research, but that I go down rabbit holes that are just ridiculous. I could spend a week just tracing, one data point to find out the most minutia detail that would go nowhere. It would not end up in a book. It would not, but the ridiculous stuff about some of the past, and the grandparents and the coal mines, and the coal mine. I could tell you, exactly how many deaths by nationality, by year, by, what type of position. I mean, I had it all, and I knew what happened to that coal mine from the year it started to who bought it 10 times over to where who holds it today. I mean, ridiculous stuff. Nobody would do that in that level of detail. And I think that's part of the problem is I probably operate in two modes. I'm either way up here and there's no detail, or I'm so down in the detail that I can't hear or see anything else. So it's two extremes. And so I'm a terrible person for that.
What is the most bizarre piece of minutia you know or have found? One of the more bizarre things you've gone down a rabbit hole with?
Definitely the coal mines, and like all those pillars, like the suicide pillars. I think you and I talked about those. It was just such an interesting part of what was necessary for the energy needs of the United States at some period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a terrible time when the coal miners, to get that extra bit of money, would go into these rooms and have to take this stack of bricks, and the suicide pillar was the final pillar that remained standing, and they'd grab it, and this room would collapse. But there was a chance that they too would not make it with that pile of coal holding that roof up inside that room. So they called it the suicide pillar. So that did end up causing a lot of deaths.
I'm going to ask you like a touchy-feely question here, which I've learned probably isn't the best kind of question to ask explorers that are hard-boiled. I asked Buzz Aldrin once what he felt when he stepped on the moon. He said, "Can you give me a multiple choice list of answers about how I should have felt?" As far as I was concerned, we were proceeding with the checklist. We weren't paid to feel, we were paid to do a job. And at first I was kind of taken aback, but now I love that answer because it was real. What did you, when you finally stepped on top of K2, I mean, I know you're tired and you got to get down and this and that, but what was your feeling? Was it elation? Was it, I don't know, a sense of completion? Was it relief? Was it, oh my God, I got to get down? Maybe all of those things. What was your first thought up there?
No, I was furious. I was pissed off.
Well, great. What? Tell us about that. That's in the book, I'm sure.
I don't know if it's in the book. No, I was pissed off because someone was making the call that we were on the summit and we weren't all up there yet.
Okay.
There were two of us that weren't up there yet. I was one of them. And I was angry that the call was being made before we were all there and all ready to do a summit photo together.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like somebody was jumping the gun. And I was angry because if that person had waited, 2 minutes, right, we would have all been there. So I know I got up there and I was angry. I was furious.
Well, that's an honest answer. You've done all this, set some Guinness World Records. This book is just out. I mean, do you have any ideas that maybe it'll be made into a movie, or do you have any aspirations there? Are you looking at that, or is it too early to be doing that?
No, it may be too late.
Late? Okay.
No, I would love to see this. I think a really strong female lead. This would be brilliant for an actress.
Like who?
Oh, gosh.
You can come back to that.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just thinking a strong female lead. Like if I look at I hate to say names, but like Claire Danes, I loved when she did like a mini series. what I struggle with is film today versus the DVD box sets and miniseries, because it would be hard to tell a story like this in one film because there's too many things, right? And all of these things have been truncated. What's funny is there's so many things that are funny that you can't make up, but they would be even funnier if they were brought out into whatever 45 minutes. So these are the things that I think of if you could see a mini series, and it would really show people the kind of, hilarious things that happen in sequences over these things in a pursuit of really anything, but it would also bring characters to life, and it could bring a couple of more characters in over. We could even introduce the Mariana Trench, introduce like other things besides the mountains.
Who do you want to direct it?
Oh, you know who I want to direct it. Catherine Bigelow.
I know.
Catherine Bigelow, if you're out there, namaste.
The Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker. She did Zero Dark 30. She did Detroit. She is, she's the one and only. Catherine, if you're out there.
Well, she of course was married to James Cameron, and we'll segue into this, who did go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench in 2012 or something. I don't remember what year, but it was a while ago. And now you've done that yourself.
That's
so,
right.
You went down to the deepest point in the ocean. And contrast that a little bit with the highest point on Earth, the top of Everest, the bottom of the ocean. Are there any similarities in that trip, what are the major differences? You don't have to knock yourself out, but clearly those are two extremes.
Yes, there's a lot of similarities. Both happen in the dark. Both have condensation or water. There's precipitation on mountains. There's like kind of dripping in a sub, which is eerie. Both have little oxygen. Both are cramped and waiting. So you're waiting, whether you're standing on a mountain or sitting in a sub for 4 hours or standing in a line for 4 hours. They both involve high risk, 8 tons of pressure versus going, into thin air. I actually saw a lot of similarities, even though they're completely different activities. I saw them as very much the same, even though one is water, one's going down, one's going up. Just both involve pressure.
And they're both expensive.
Yeah, there's that. But I see Katie back. Let me ask Katie, are you ready for audience Q&A?
I think we're just about out of time.
Okay.
But Jim, if you have another question.
I do have one more question. So what is next for you, Vanessa O'Brien? Is it space? What is the next thing you're going to do other than promote this book?
Wow. Next is always a hard question. I always am open to really any type of adventures. So I never close the door, or, some things I would never have done if I hadn't left doors open. I think space is interesting. I don't know what that looks like. If it's, kind of a more lunar, if it's, just getting up to the Kármán line, if it's, there's a couple of variations of space, but I think they're all interesting and a way to view Earth in a way that I don't think we could ever do otherwise. I think shipwrecks are interesting. I think, there's certainly
Titanic?
No, not Titanic. I would go Endurance.
Okay. Yeah, that's in Antarctica, right? Yeah.
Yep, that's Antarctica. That's Shackleton's ship.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's just so many places. Even if they've been explored, they have not always been explored with the mindset of climate change or other things, and what we can do to help in that sense. So there's also so many other 8,000 meter peaks as well, and then there's peaks in other places that have not been climbed yet. So I would never rule anything out.
So it sounds like you are far from done.
Not done.
That's what I'm saying. Far from it.
Not done.
This has been great, Vanessa. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. This is wonderful.
Yes, thank you all so much. And Vanessa, I cannot wait to see what you do next. We'll be watching along here at Lemuria. And we've got signed copies of Vanessa's book, To the Greatest Heights. It was such a beautiful book. Told Vanessa earlier, I don't usually read a lot of nonfiction, but I just ate this book up. It was amazing, and you're such a talented writer. So it was so great. I've got a link below if you want to buy your copy online or stop in the store. And thanks again, Vanessa and Joan, for joining us. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.